Hello, and thank you for taking a look at this short video on the subject of Japanese gardens, and you're very welcome to my website, and I hope that you find the next few minutes quite interesting. I thought I'd just lay out a few things that you may know or you may not know about Japanese gardens. For example, did you know that Japanese style gardens originated in China? A lot of people think, oh, Japanese gardens, they must be Japanese. That isn't actually the case. Japanese gardens seek to copy nature wherever they can. Some more examples of that coming up a little bit later on. Space is really important in a Japanese garden. It gives a feeling of freedom, something that is very important to the Japanese. Japanese gardens like to link the past with the present by using nostalgia in the garden. If you've ever been to one, you might have noticed that. The garden should embrace the seasons of autumn and winter and spring and summer. Meditation in a Japanese garden is extremely important as well, because they can be, by their very nature, quite sort of religious places, and in fact a lot of them are designed along religious lines. Water, very common in a Japanese garden, but so is dry water. That can be pebbles, that can be sand, and that's particularly appropriate for a Zen garden. More about what a Zen garden is a little later on in this video. Tea houses for the tea ceremony are very common in larger Japanese gardens. You've probably heard of this. The art of bonsai is practiced in Japanese gardens. Surprises are also essential, and if you go to a Japanese garden, if you look, you will find them. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you what they are right now because it's more fun finding them. Japanese gardens should always create unity and harmony. That is a necessity. There are houses, for example, I've already mentioned the tea house in Japanese gardens. Also, there can be gazebos, even pergolas, and they're linked to a lot of Japanese garden designs, and they're used really beautifully as well. Japanese gardens always have a feeling of serenity. Rocks are a really important ingredient of Japanese and Zen gardens, and symbolism is crucial as well. Follow the strict design rules if you're thinking of designing your own Japanese garden, and you will actually make it not only authentic but also extremely accurate in the way that Japanese gardens are meant to be. Japanese garden culture stretches back hundreds, if not thousands of years. As I said at the start of the video, China is actually the place of origin of Japanese gardens, and there's a good reason for it as well. Copying landscapes in miniature is essential for authenticity in a Japanese garden. And Japanese gardens as well, if you've ever been to one, they're very, very quiet, serene places, and this is deliberate. They are protected from noise, and that's not only in the environment around them, but also their positioning. Fresh water is sacred in Japanese gardens. There are many types of rocks and stones in the garden construction itself, and that goes for Zen gardens as well. Moss is really important in Japanese gardens, and particularly in Zen gardens, for a reason that will become obvious in just a few moments. You might have noticed before, lanterns are frequently used in Japanese gardens, usually made of stone. In fact, there's a golf course very close to where I live that has a number spread around on the tee boxes, and they really are very, very beautiful. Japanese gardens have bridges, and they have a specific meaning within the whole construction of the garden. Bonsai, or miniature trees, are essential. We're back to bonsai again. Obviously you're aware of what a bonsai tree is. Probably you've gone to a garden centre or a plant retailer near your home, and there they are in beautiful little pots, and 4 or 5 inch high trees, sometimes a little bigger than that, and they take an awful lot of looking after. Usually the first couple you get, it's not such a happy ending, because as I say, there is a specific way that you look after them. But when I talk about bonsai trees in Japanese gardens, I'm not talking about ones that are like 4 or 5 inches to maybe a foot tall. I'm talking of miniature versions of acers and Japanese maples and so on that can stand 3, 4, 5, 6 feet high usually about 50 to 60% of the actual size of the original tree. And the art of bonsai pruning is a very exact skill that can be learnt as well, although you've got to do it correctly, otherwise you end up like me when you go to a garden centre and buy some bonsai trees in miniature. There are scores of Japanese gardens to visit all over the world, some beautiful, beautiful ones. Obviously in Japan there are an awful lot of them and some very famous ones, but you'll find very good ones in places like London, Portland, Oregon in the United States, and even Buenos Aires in Argentina. But there'll be one in a country, if not in yours, but somewhere near you, that you can go and enjoy. Worshipping in Japanese gardens is to pay respect to dead ancestors. There's a lot of sort of going back to history and historical things that have happened, not only personally but in terms of the country as well, in Japanese gardens. And the reason that there is a lot of water in Japanese gardens is to reflect the land shortage in Japan. It is an overcrowded country, and that's why a lot of Japanese gardens are very small, but really are not cluttered in a sort of Western garden kind of way, but they look so precise in relatively small areas. Of course you can have very big ones. Bonsai trees in a garden require an awful lot of care and should never be exposed to excessive heat. And there are specific ways of pruning bonsai trees that has to be learnt if you want to have a Japanese garden. But don't think, oh my goodness me, I'll never be able to do that, because you definitely would. It's not that difficult. Miniature trees concentrate the powers of fully grown trees. That's what the Japanese think, and that's why they're in Japanese gardens. There are 5 main types of Japanese gardens, that's generally accepted, and Zen gardens, they're a relative of Japanese gardens, are a lot simpler and a lot easier to construct, and they can be equally as nice as well in their own way. Zen gardens do not use shrubs and trees. I said I was going to talk some more about Zen gardens, but they can use moss, and there's another reason for that as well. There's a reason for everything in Japanese and Zen gardens. A flowering cherry tree symbolises the changing seasons, very, very important in a Japanese garden, as I explained earlier. Mounds symbolise mountains. A specific cluster of 3 stones, for example, in a Japanese garden is considered a symbol of the Holy Trinity of Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. The point of a Japanese garden is to trigger people's emotions and feelings. You might, if you've been to one before, notice a hand basin. They are used in religious ceremonies, and they're very common, quite often carved out of stone, and they look beautiful, and they are used frequently. Japanese garden design puts space usage as a fundamental requirement. You know, all spaces in Japanese gardens are used for a reason, and it's all to do with the history and the design principles and the reasons behind the way things are in Japanese gardens. So I hope that you found this video moderately interesting, and I thank you for looking at it. It's my pleasure to have done it for you, and on the screen you can see my website address, which will take you to a lot of information about Japanese gardens, and my manual that is in plain English, is easy to understand, and goes into in great detail, but not in a boring way, I can assure you, everything you need to know about Japanese and Zen gardens. So check out the website, and thank you very much indeed for your time, and I hope that if you're going to a Japanese garden or you're planning to design one, that you have a very enjoyable time.